All right, welcome back. We are at class 6 now, CSE 223. Today's class is a different sort of feel. Our main goal today is to get Eclipse installed on your system and get it up and running and start getting it customized. We're going to need to use Eclipse once we start making GUIs so that we don't have to type a lot of kind of boilerplate code over and over again. I don't really want this to become a class in learning the nuances of working with Swing. I want to use Swing as a building block and put together Swing components. But to do that in Java, we have to do a lot of low-level things, and I don't think they add a lot to our understanding. So we're going to pivot to start using an IDE, and the IDE we're using for this course is Eclipse. So the problem set today is relatively short, but it can take a long time. You definitely want to get this done today. You don't want to put this off until we're actually using Eclipse, because at that point, you're going to fall behind if you've got to spend time trying to figure out how to get the stuff downloaded, installed, and so on and so forth. So we want to get that done now so that if you run into problems, you have a chance to talk to me, come by office hours, and so on, and we can get this squared away before we have to start using it. After today, we're going to continue working on the command line for the next few classes, but then, like I said, when we start working with developing GUIs, we'll start working in Eclipse and use that to our advantage. So I'm starting with a pretty bare bones system right now. I have no Java system installed. I have no Eclipse system installed, and we're going to do this from scratch. Let's talk about operating systems first of all. So ideally, most computer science students at this point have access to their own Linux environment. And you've got two options for doing that. If you have Linux installed on your laptop or desktop, that's great. That's your best option. That's going to work well here. It's going to work well at university. It's going to work well beyond. And if you have an old laptop, that's several years old and is kind of like slow and underperforming, you can put Linux on it and it'll run great, right? The laptop I use for teaching is quite a few years old, and I just put Linux on it, and it runs fine. Does not need to be the latest and greatest. If you cannot do that, I strongly recommend you run VirtualBox on top of Windows and install Linux inside VirtualBox. We do this in CSE 224. Some people picked it up in 222. Let me know if you want to do that and you don't have access to the information on how to set that up. I'll point you to the old videos and so on. But that at least gives you a genuine full-blown Linux environment. This is not a Windows system for Linux. This is an actual Ubuntu system with X Windows and all of that stuff. That's your second option. For using Eclipse, your third option is just to use it on top of Windows. And your mileage may vary, but if you want to stick with that environment, that's an option. I'm going to go ahead and install this on my current operating system, which is Linux, but the steps should be similar theoretically for Windows. So you can Google Eclipse IDE download, but I put a link to it in the practice problem, just eclipse.org, downloads packages. Main thing here, make sure you're downloading from eclipse.org. If you're downloading from softwareIsUs.spam or something like that, don't do that, right? It's likely to install software that you're not interested in. All right, so on this page there are a gazillion options, and they all sound pretty exciting and interesting, but we're going for sort of the first option listed here, Eclipse IDE for Java developers. That's the version you want, right? It's Eclipse, it's an integrated development environment, and we want to do it to develop code in Java. So don't do the Enterprise Edition, don't do web developers, just do Eclipse IDE for Java. If you already have Eclipse installed on your system, you may need to do your own thing to to get Java running. But it's fairly flexible what you're going to have to turn in and so on and so forth. But again, you can sandbox all of this inside a VirtualBox if you like. All right, so Eclipse IDE for Java developers, and I'm just going to click on Linux x86 64, and I'm going to get a big download. I'll go ahead and pull that again. Make sure you're coming from eclipse.org, and I'm just going to save this. And it's going to give me a gzipped tar file. So there's my progress bar. Alright, so let's go into my download area. And here's the file that I just downloaded, so we can look at the table of contents for that, tar tvf. And we can see that all these files are going under a top-level directory called Eclipse. So you can decide where you want to put this. I'm going to put this under user local, and I'm just going to make an Eclipse area underneath here. So you can put it where you want. I'm just going to put it right here. So I'm going down an extra sub-level here, but I just want to play it safe. So I'm going to extract into my Eclipse directory, and this leaves me another set of files here. And Eclipse should be the executable file that I want to run. So let's see. So I'm going to recursively change the ownership on all of these files and the group permission. All right, so that's more complex than it needed to be. But if I sit here now and I say something like user local Eclipse, and one more Eclipse, all right, that should go ahead and start my IDE. So like I said, you can put it wherever you want. I'm just putting it in there. So let me do one thing first. Let me put something in my bash RC. So if you're wondering, user local Eclipse is where I decided to put the installation. The installation comes under its own folder, and inside that there's an executable. But then if I decide to install a different version of Eclipse later, I can put it, under the same directory and call it Eclipse 2 or something like that. So I'm going to set up an alias inside bash, and I'll go ahead and start a new shell. And now if I just say Eclipse, it should go ahead and bring that up. And it's bringing up Eclipse 2024-03. All right, so we've got a basic setup going. Next thing we need to do is decide on a workspace. So when you're running Eclipse, every project that you make is sitting at the root of a directory tree. And there's a whole slew of files that will get created with each project. And we want every project to be in its own directory. But all of those directories can sit under one common, what's called a workspace. So I'm going to take the default right here, which is /home/nix/Eclipse workspace. And I'm just going to just use that as my top level. So I'll say use this as a default, do not ask again, and I'll go ahead and start Eclipse. I'm going to close out my window back here. close out this window. All right, so here we go. This is the Eclipse IDE, and it'll stop nagging you eventually. All right, so there's a welcome page. We can close that out. But that's enough to get us basically started. So a couple of things to know up front. There's a lot of different windows. There's a window over here where I can look at my different projects. I can look at source code in here. I can see various output, error messages, warnings, console output, and so on down here. There's a task list over here. There's an outline. So you can customize this. You can change the shape of these things. You can move them around and so on and so forth. I'll mostly work with just these three views. If at some point you munge things and you want to get back to where you were, go to Window Perspective, and you can say Reset Perspective, and it'll take you back to this original setup. But I'm going to close these, and let's try to make a Java project. All right, so I'm going to go under File, New, and I'm going to say New Java Project. All right, project name. Pick a project name. I'm just going to call this Demo 1. Use default location. Well, default location is going to be the project name underneath wherever you set up your workspace. So leave that as is. Use an execution environment. Leave that where it is. It should be Java 17. Create separate folders. That's fine. I'm going to uncheck this box which says create module info.java file. That's the only change that we're going to make here other than the project name. Uncheck that box. And we can go ahead and say next, and just kind of see what some of the options are, but there's nothing here we need to change, so we'll just go ahead and say finish. And now I've got an entry over here in the Package Explorer Demo 1. The little triangle pointing at it says if I click on that I can expand it, and I can see that I've got another expandable folder underneath, JRE System Library, and I can open that, and there's all kinds of stuff now that I can go and explore. I'm not going to do any of that, right? I'm just going to leave it like this. And let's go ahead and say File, New, and let's make a new class. Remember, everything in Java is a class, and so we're going to create just a class that's going to have a main program with a hello world in it. So we'll click on class. All right. Package, let's leave the package as a default. Right, don't change that. We have to say what the name of our class is. So let's say demo main. And then there's a nice little option down here. Which method stubs would you like to create? Public static void main. You know how we keep doing this over and over again? Well, I can check this box and it will create a template for public static void main. So those are the only options I'm going to change. Put in your class name, and if it's going to include a main method, go ahead and check this box if you want it to generate a bit of code for you. And here we go. There's our main program. And it's got a to-do entry, which is just a comment saying, hey, you have to put some code in here eventually. So let me go ahead and just make a hello world. So system out print line. This is a test. All right, so there's my program. I can save it with Control S. There's a little asterisk saying that I've got unsaved changes. Control S will save it. If you type something else, it'll be unsaved. You can also come over here and say File Save, but you know, faster to just use your keyboard, Control S. Let's go ahead and run it. So I can hit the little green Run button, or I can go up to the Run menu and say Run. So I hit the green Run button, and here's my console output, and it says this is a test. So that's all there is to it. So I can come up here and, you know, let's make a loop. Let's loop 5 times. So I hit an enter, and it filled in a closing semi-bracket and opened a new line and indented. Well, I wanted this code to be in here, so I'm just going to cut that and paste it in there. And now I've got a new line I'll get rid of. And I've got a blank line down here I'll get rid of. And so there we go. There's our main method, and it should print out 5 times. This is a test. And sure enough, that's what it does. And if I want to print out this as a test and append the integer value I to it, I can do that and run it. And this is a test 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So having an IDE like this is about rapid prototyping. It's also about, it will indent your code for you, it will fill in stubs for you, it will give you typing suggestions. It's mostly about rapid development, right? This is a way to spend less time typing in commands to compile, to go into the editor and so on, and being able to just put in some code, run it, see what it does, change your code, run it, see what it does, and so on. All right, so that's the basic view of using Eclipse. Let's talk about details. So one thing that you've probably noticed while I was typing is that the system is constantly trying to help you. If I type system, it's underlined it in red to tell me, hey, system is a syntax error. It's put a red mark over here saying, hey, there's a problem. There's actually two problems. I'm missing a semicolon at the end. It's filled in a gray block to show me where else I use the same word system. I can hover on it and get information, right? This is all very, very busy. At some level, this can be helpful, but at some other level, this is like having a friend who's constantly grabbing your keyboard from you saying, let me show you how to do that, right? And you're like, well, I wasn't done typing yet. So I can hit my period, and now I've got a new pop-up saying, hey, what do you want to type after system dot? Do you want to type class, ERR, in, out, array copy, or any of these other things? And if I ignore that, I can type OU, and now it's telling me out, and it's showing me some description of out. And if you just tune that out, you can have the same kind of peaceful experience that you get with something like VI. But sometimes it's hard to tune out. If I hit a parenthesis, it fills in a closing parenthesis. It colors it yellow. And if I hit a quotation mark, it fills in a closing quotation mark. My yellow parentheses turns normal color, and it gets an error because I don't have a semicolon. There's a lot of stuff going on, right? So it may be that you prefer to not have Eclipse doing all of this stuff for you. Unfortunately, it's very hard to turn all of it off. But I can show you how to get rid of some of this and get back to where, this is an editor that you type into and it records what you type. So let's take a look at how we can tweak some of these options. All right, so all of this is going to be found under Window Preferences. And there are so many preference settings available that there's a search window here. So let me just type COMPLET for complete or completion. And let's look at options under here. So I'm going to go under Java Editor, Content Assistance, insert single proposals automatically, fill method arguments and show guess. I'm just going to take these off. I don't even know what those do. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. I'm going to come down under Advanced. I'm not going to worry about anything there. Favorites, I'm not going to worry about anything there. So let me come up here and type indent for indentation. And under Java Editor Typing, I'm going to take off automatically close strings, parentheses, bases, braces, automatically insert braces at correct position, enter key adjusts indentation, tab key adjusts indentation. I'm going to get rid of all of this. When pasting, adjust indentation. I'll leave update imports. So we'll just go with that. So let's see how we did here. So I'm going to hit enter. So I don't think it's possible to turn off this level of automatic indentation. People have been asking for this for years. I don't think it's ever been implemented. But the additional indentation can be turned off. So let's say system.out. So it's still suggesting things that I could type. But now I can type a parenthesis and a quote without having it fill in extra stuff. And then let's see what happens if we do something with brackets. Right, so now it's not filling in that closing bracket for me either. And so if I run this, I've got a pair of nested loops. Oh, so every time I try to run it, if I haven't saved my code yet, you know, I've got that asterisk there, it'll say, hey, do you want to save this? You can check this box and it'll always save it before you run, and then it'll just go ahead and do its thing. So I can scroll through the console window and I can see my output. All of this is resizable. I can make my console window bigger and so on, but mostly you're going to want your code area to be set up. So that makes things a little more responsive to what you're typing instead of trying to predict what you're trying to do. All right, if you want to get rid of that last business of suggesting, go to Java Editor Content Assist and take off Enable Auto Activation. And now if I type system dot, it won't come up with all the options and keep filling things in and so on. And so if you like the options of auto-completion, that's fine. You can do that. If not, you can disable that also. If you want to get back Content Assist, when your mouse is right here, you can hit Control Space and bring up a list of options that it would normally show you automatically. So I can see, for example, print, and I can see all the different types of arguments that I can put in there, and so on and so forth. You can also click on these if you want, and it will fill it in and give you, you know, a template that you can start typing in and so on and so forth. So sometimes that's useful if you can't remember the name of a method or a subclass or something like that. So up to you, it's your choice, obviously. But that's how you can turn off some of those features. All right, so typing in this window is basically like typing in Notepad, right? You move around with the arrow keys, you can select text, you can copy it, you can go somewhere else and paste it, and so on and so forth. If that's your preferred style of editing, that's what you've got. But if you want to use something more modern, you have the option of installing something VI-like in Eclipse. So this is also something you can do optionally in the practice problems. You can install something called VWrapper. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that. And again, this is optional, but it gives you, you know, the capability to do you know, more powerful editing using what you know about VI. So we're going to go to a window for installing new software, but we're going to have to put in this as a source from which we want to install software. So let me go ahead and copy that, and I'll go under Help, Install New Software, and then Work With, I'm going to say Add, and I'll put in that URL and say Add. And then I have options for what I want to install. I'm just going to check the box next to VWrapper and say Next. And it usually hangs at about 40-something%. We'll see how it does this time. It's hanging without giving us a progress number, but that's okay. All right, and then we'll say Next. And we'll accept the terms of the license and say Finish. Okay, so there's our 16%. And it's doing something. Oh, I guess I have to say that I actually trust it. Okay, trust selected. Do you trust the content? Sure. I don't recommend this in general, but I'm feeling trusting today. All right, so that was pretty fast. So you have to restart the IDE, so we'll go ahead and restart. Yeah, I'll save my main program, and let's see what it does. All right, so I've got a little V symbol up here, which is VWrapper. And if I click that, turn it off, take off the background color, now it's off, but by default that's going to be on. And so now, you know, I can open a new line, and I can can type text. I can go forward by word, backwards by words. I can yank and put. I can do a 5DD to get rid of 5 lines. I can do a 3 yank, and then I can paste it down here and go back and get rid of this, and so on and so forth. So, so you got the power of VI. Now, if you decide you want to do this, one caveat: there are still keyboard shortcuts that override this. So, for example, in VI, Control D moves us down a line, but if I hit Control D, it actually deletes the last line that I was sitting on. So you need to go into Window Preferences, and let's just look for keyboard. Let's look for shortcuts. All right, so it's going to be under Keys, and I can sort by binding and come down to the controls and get rid of the bindings that I'm used to using. So, for example, I use Control D to move down. So in the text editing window, I'm going to get rid of that. So I'll unbind it. In my run window, Control D signals end of F. I'm going to keep that. And as you use this, if you find that you're constantly doing something, and it's being overridden by some default, you can go into there and uncheck it. But now Control D will move me down, U will move me up, and so on. So that gives you a little more familiar editing environment, including the colon key. All right, so that's the optional part, and then we've got our hello world. So we're also going to want to install Swing and Window Builder, and these are the things we're going to use for working with GUIs. And this is going to be again under Help Install New Software. And let's start with Swing. So instead of typing a site here or adding a site, let's just click the drop-down window, and let's try download Eclipse org releases. And then in the filter text here, let's type the word Swing, and it'll bring up General Purpose Tools, Window Builder, Swing Designer. And I'm just going to check this top level box. That should get us Swing and Window Builder. I'll say Next. And this will be very much the same drill we just did with the VWrapper. A fair bit of waiting, and then agreeing to some license terms, and confirming some choices. And then finally rebooting Eclipse. So used to hang at 42%, now it seems to hang at 16%. All right, and then restart IDE, yes. And this is all just startup pain, right? Once you've got this done, you're pretty much set to go. The one thing I'll warn you is that if you change to a new workspace, your preference settings get undone. Now you can save your preferences in a file and then load them from that file. That works sometimes better than others, and when you change versions of Eclipse, sometimes it stops working. But if we stay in one workspace, even though we have multiple projects, all of this should be set up now. We should be good to go. All right, so I'm going to right-click on my current project. I'm going to come down and say Close Project. So I still see the name of that project sitting here, but without that arrow next to it, I know this project is closed. And I'm going to make a new project. So I'm going to say File, New Java Project, and I'm going to call this Sneak Peek Demo. And we're just going to take a look at what we can do once we have Swing and Window Builder installed. So now this project is open. There's the greater than sign, the arrow pointing to it. I'm going to say File, New, but instead of saying a class, I'm going to say Other. And I'm going to come down to Window Builder, expand that, come down to Swing Designer, expand that, and I'm going to say JFrame. And I'll just call this something like Main. And again, we're going to leave everything else the same. We're going to leave the default package, and I'll say Finish. and it creates a 41 line file for me with a bunch of stuff in it, right? And over time we will learn what this stuff means, but among other things there's a main program right here, a main method, but it's got all this other stuff in here. But if I run this, I get a cool little window, and it's resizable, and it's movable, and I can maximize it, and I can demaximize it, and I can hit the X to close it out. When I'm running a Java program, I have a little red square here saying that my process is running, and if I hit that red square, it will terminate it. But if I hit the X on this window, that will also end my program. The red square goes away, and it tells me my main class just terminated. So with very little work, right, we've got a frame popped up, and in a few classes from now, we'll start messing around with how to actually design those frames to make graphical interfaces. All right, so that's the quick overview of Eclipse installation and setup.